Okay guys, just a quick reminder, we are making a blog app with a fully functional backend, right? That means that once the app is complete and deployed and hosted, anyone anywhere, right, can sign up and sign in, right? Anyone can view blogs that has been posted by other people. Anyone can also post blogs, right? That is what we are going to do, right? Just wanted to quickly remind us, and all the features I mentioned in the initial video, the first video, they are going to be implemented here, right? But after we are done with the homepage, front end and back end, we will just host it and work on the rest gradually, right? So now let's just get straight to it. Open a new VS Code window, right, or any text editor you want, right? Someone said I say right a lot. I know that. Okay, I'll work on I mean a new window, right? And as I said, we are going to create everything from scratch, right? So go to file, click on new folder. What is new folder? Yeah, open folder, right? Click on open folder, and I'm going to create a new folder, right? Create a new folder, and I'm creating mine on desktop. I'm naming my blog app, right? You can do anything you want. So I've named my blog app, and I've selected that particular folder to be my project folder, right? So now I'm going to move on to full screen, and yeah. Okay, so now this is our project folder, right? Now we have our project folder. We just have to do a few things. You create two folders, right? You create a JavaScript folder, JavaScript, right? And you go and create a CSS folder, right? If you don't know anything about JavaScript, don't be scared, right? We are going to learn all this together. So you open the JavaScript folder, and you do a few things. You create 3 files, right? First file is script.js. .js. Second one is a new file, create manifest.json, right? And the last file is you create a service.js, right? So in the JavaScript folder we have 3 files: manifest.json, which is basically describing the metadata about our app. When we talk about metadata, like the name of the app, the icon that will be on it when you open your phone, the icon that will be on it, it will be all be specified in the manifest file, the manifest.json. And also the how do we call it, the orientation, whether it's in portrait, whether it's in full screen, all that information will be in the manifest.json, right? And the service worker basically enables the app to run offline, right? It is a progressive web app, right? So you need a service worker to store your cache and push notifications and other things in order for it to work offline, right? And the scripts.js is our normal JavaScript that we write, right? So in the CSS folder too, we have to create a file. We will create what we call style.css, as we are used to, style.css. Great. And we'll create one more folder. Let's create one more folder. I'll create another folder and I'll call it assets, right? The assets will be used to store our images, right? So great, we are basically done. We have 3 folders: assets, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And great, let's start this. So outside or inside, let me put it this way, inside your project folder, right? You right click inside your project folder and you create an index.html. That is our homepage, right? HTML. Great, let me maximize this, right? So now we saw the interface and we are now about to actually start programming. Let me close all these things. And okay, great. So now we have just our index.html. So I'm just going to do exclamation mark and I hit enter. Then we have our initials or starting code, right? I'm not going to explain this. We already have so I'm going to change the title and name it LCS blog app, right? That's a title. So now we have our title. Let me do some linking. So I'll link the CSS to the HTML, right? So I'll just do CSS/style.css, right? So now we have basically set up our HTML. Then let's start this. First we create a container, right? To house the entire app, right? Contain the entire app, right? And we can see from the app that we have a navigation, we have a centered section, and we have the bottom part, right? So we actually need to position these really well. It is actually very important. So but then before we start, you see we actually have nothing in our assets folder, right? That's supposed to house our images, right? So I'll go and copy the images and come and paste it in the asset folder. I'll provide a link to the images in case you want to use the same images in the description when I post this video on YouTube, right? Okay, so I will select the 2 images, black wave and image 1, copy it, and go to desktop, our project folder, blog app, right? So I'll open blog app and open assets and actually paste it here, right? So now we have it. So now back to VS Code. Okay, So now once we open our asset folder, we see that black wave and image one is here, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to set the width of the container. We're going to set the black wave image, I mean this particular image, right, as the background of the entire screen, right? That is what we're going to do first, right? Okay, so now let's just go ahead and CSS, right? So CSS style.css. First thing is we set our universal parameters, right? By that I mean everywhere margin will be 0, padding will be 0, box sizing will be border box, and font family will be sans serif, right? So now let's start the container. So for the container, we do dot container to select the container, right? And to style it, we just type whatever we want here. I set the height of the container to 100 viewport height, right? That means the height of the entire screen, right? So 100%, it will span across the entire screen. Width is 100 viewport width. Width is this way, height is this way, right? So and the background is, I set it to black wave, right? That particular image, right? And background size is cover, and background position is center. Background attachment is fixed, right? That is for the container. So now let's see this. Let's preview this. So now I launch my live server, and this is what we have, right? Let's continue. So okay, HTML, let's work on our navigation. So we create a div and name it navigation, right? And in navigation, what we're going to do is we need to position it first before we actually start giving it content, right? So now let's see to our CSS and style our navigation. So we do not navigation to select navigation and style it, right? So we're going to give it a width of 100%. 100% means your parent container, take 100% the width of it, right? In this case, the parent container is the container we have right here, right? It spans 100 viewport height, so it's basically going to span the entire screen, right? That's in width. And height, let's give it a height of, let's say 50 pixels will do, right? And to see it, let's give it a border, right? So let's give it a border of 1 pixel solid white, right? So now let's see how the container looks like in Firefox. So now this is how it will be, right? This is the container, the border we give it, right? So this is how the navigation is, right? Sorry, I was using container. I'm supposed to be using navigation, right? So now, as we know, this is how our navigation is. Let's try to divide it, right? Remember, in the app we have how do we call it? A label right here, right? The brand name right here, and we have a navigation in the center, and we have a button right here, right? So now let's do that division right now. In our HTML, within the navigation div, right, we are going to create two elements. One is name, right, and we're going to create another one, and we are going to name it menu, right, for brand name, and nav menu for navigation menu, right? Okay, so within the brand name, we are going to create we will come back and spice it up later, but right now let's create an h5, right, a header 5, and one, and name it LCS, sorry, and write LCS in it, right? I hope we see the tree we are building here, right? We have a container, right? When you open the container, we have a navigation, right? This is a navigation, right? When you open the navigation, we have a brand name and we have nav menu, right? This is the brand name and this is the nav menu, right? They are independent elements, but the brand name and nav menu are all inside the navigation, and the navigation is inside the container, right? So now let's see how it looks like now. Let's see. Okay. So now okay, nothing shows here, right? So now let's start the brand name. Back in our CSS, let's start the brand name. So we can just do dot brand name, right? And we will style it. Styling of the brand name, I gave it a display of flex, right? And I gave it a line item center, justify content center, so everything in it will be centered in the middle, right? I gave it a border of 1 pixel solid red for temporarily, just so we see it. I will remove it later. A width of 70 pixels, height of 100%. That means it will span the navigation 100% in height, and I gave it a color of white, right? So now let's see how it looks like. Okay, so now this is how it looks like now, right? This is the border, red border we gave it, so everything in it, that's the LCS, is centered in the middle. It looks good, right? Let's move on to the other one. Back in our HTML, we are done with the brand name, right? So we come to our nav menu, right? That will contain the navigation menu, right? Within the nav menu, we create an element that we will call nav item, right? So the nav menu will have nav items, right? And the nav item is going to house the name of that particular navigation, right? So now let's say the first one is blog. Let me give it an HTML, right? Blog. So let me copy this and paste it a couple of times. Okay, so now let me paste it. Now we have to change the names, right? The first one was blog, the second one was trending, right? So we changed this blog to trending. Third one was right. So let me just do the whole thing. We have all our navigation items, right? Let me zoom out. We have our blog, we have trending, we have news, we have feeds, and we have profile, right? But to see, let me just do a little tweaking. I'll go to the container and add one more styling. I'll add color, right? Now I'll give it a color of white, right? So that we can see what's going on. So now let's see how our nav menu looks like, right? So I'll go to the live server and Firefox. So now we see how it is, right? case you can see it, you can just see it doesn't look good. We want it to be somewhere here, right? We want it to be somewhere here. We don't want it to be here, right? So now let's see how we do that. We move to our CSS, right? And within the navigation, we do a little tweaking within the navigation, right? We give it a display of grade and grade template column of 2 fraction, 3 fraction, right? So it means go to navigation, right? Whatever the elements that are in them, there are 2 elements. That means there are 2 elements. So if there were 3 elements, I would have added 1 here, right? Maybe 4 fraction 2 here. So now there are 2 elements within the navigation. Let's see. Within the navigation, we have I just want to confirm. We have 2 elements, right? That is the brand name and the nav menu, right? So those 2 elements, you divide the width of the navigation into 2 fraction and 3 fraction and give it to them, right? That's a lot of explanation. So now let's see how it looks. Yeah, okay, so now it did that. It puts this one here, and now this one is right here, right? Now all we need to do is straighten it up, right? There are a lot of ways, different ways to do it, but I'm going to go with this method, right? So right there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set nav menu to display flexed, right? So that means all elements in navigation will be aligned horizontally, right? So now let's do that. So CSS, let me start nav menu dot nav menu and set display to flex, right? So now let's see how it looks like. Okay, now we see that they are horizontally aligned, right? But they are too close together, right? Let's space it up. So what we do is we go back to our Visual Studio Code, check our HTML. We see that there are nav items within the nav menu, right? So the nav items, you will give them a margin, right? So we come here and do nav item. Is it items or item? The name is very important. It's item, right? So nav item, we give it a margin left, right? Of let's try 15 pixels and see. Okay, it looks cool. It looks cool. But one thing is, look, they are actually 2 way up, right? Let's bring them to the center, right? One way we can do this is still using our display flex, right? So let's see, nav menu is already set to display flex, right? So we can just do align item center, so it will align everything to the center, right? So let's see how it looks like. Great. This is actually how we want it, right? We will take off this bar right now, but then this is how it looks. It looks good, right? You change the font and everything at the end, and you add all the icons in the end. Okay, so now let's continue. We have used a lot of time for the navigation. So yeah, so we are going to add a little button here, right? That will click of this button will bring up the pop-up menu here, right? So now let's do that. HTML. I'll close the brand name, and I'll close the nav menu, right? So under them, I'll create another one. I'll call it button, right? So this button is going to be the button that when you click it, it will actually open that menu, right? So I'll go back to my style.css and let me style the button. So dot button, since we have already used grid, I cannot use any, and I place the button within the navigation, and we have already set the navigation, the grid template column of the navigation to 2 fraction, 3 fraction, right? So I'm going to have to position this absolutely, right? So position will be absolute, and position absolute, and I'm going to give it a height of, let's say, 40 pixels, width of 40 pixels, so it will be a square, border 1 pixel solid red, so we can all see it. I'll take off all the borders later, and right 10 pixels top, let's say 5 pixels will do, right? So now let's see how it looks like. Great. Now we have our button here. I think it's too close to the edge. Let me increase the right, let me make it right 20 pixels, right? So now let me see, it looks cool now, right? So we are done with our navigation. I'll insert the icon later on, right? So now every icon, I'll just put a box there. Let's continue to our center screen. This is a screenshot of the final app, right? We can see the button here, we can see the news here. This is the button here we just created. So now we are going to create this particular section, right? From here, all this section, right? From there we move on. So yeah, let's do this. Back in our HTML, I'm going to close the navigation, right? And within, just under the navigation and within the container, I'm going to create what I'll call featured news, right? When I say I'm creating, I mean I'm creating a div, right? We deal with divs in HTML. So when I say I'm creating, I mean I'm creating a div, right? So I'm going to create featured news. Press enter, and it will create the div featured news for me. What the featured news is going to be like, it's going to be an illusion, right? It's going to create the illusion of the scrolling feature, but then it's going to house the entire website or page, right? Let me put it that way. So now let's start the featured news. So I'll go to my CSS and I'll just come here. So for the featured news, I'm going to give it a width of 100%, so it spans across the entire site. Height of this and a CSS calculation, right? I'm doing calc 100 viewport height minus 50 pixels, right? So calculate the entire viewport height and subtract 50 pixels from it, and give that particular attribute that height to featured news, right? The reason I did that is I want to subtract the height of the navigation, which is 50 pixels, from the height of uh, um, the feature news, right? So now, yeah, I'm going to give it a border of 1 pixel solid, let's say line, right? So now let's see how it looks like. Okay, so now this is the feature news, right? It is independent from the navigation, right? So now let's work. So within the feature news, we can see that we have two sections, right? We have a left and we have a right, right? The left is actually what we call featured blocks, right? So these are featured blocks, right? And the right are what we call trends, right? So any trends, they are just text, right? So now let's go back to our HTML and work that out. So in our HTML, within the featured news, we're going to create two elements. We are going to call one featured blocks, featured block, right? Blocks, and we're going to call the other one trends, right? So now we have two elements within our featured news. Now let's start that one. So right in our featured news, I'm going to give it a display of grade, right? Grade, and give it a grade template column of 1 pixel, sorry, one fraction, right? So it's going to divide the two elements within the feature news into two. So half is going to be for one and the other is going to be for one, right? So now let's take one. Let's first take this part. Let's start this part. I mean the trends part, right? This part. So now let's see the trends. So you just do the trends and you can actually give any attribute you want to it, right? Let's give it a border first. Border 1 pixel solid. Let's choose another color, blue, right? So now let's see how it looks like. Okay, so now we see that there is a blue. I don't know if you see it, right? But then there is a blue here, right? So that shows us the trends part, right? Yep. Let's see. So within the trends, we see that we have to create this particular element, right? So I'm going to call this trending, right? So this is trending, and it is in the trends, right? So I'm going to go back within the HTML, and within the trends, I'm going to create dot trending, right? So the trending is going to be within the trends. Now let's start dot trending and see. So let's see dot trending. Let's give it a height of, let's say 300 pixels, a width of 100%. That means it's going to span 100% of the trends, right? And let's see, a border. Let's give it a border so we see how it looks like. 1 pixel solid. Let's give it CI. Let's see how it looks like here. Okay, now this is the trending, right? It is up, but we want it to be down, right, all the way at the bottom here. How are we going to do that? To do that, we have to give the trends a position of absolute, right? So position of absolute, and we come here and give the trending a position of relative. Sorry, we give the trends a position of relative. Why did I mix this up? And the trending a position of absolute, right? Yeah, absolute. And what we can do is we can say bottom 0, right, and probably let's say left 0. So what position absolute means, don't care about whatever other elements, right? Just style me myself. So now we are saying that if this trending is positioned absolutely, we are saying that it should be at the bottom of a relative element, right? The closest relative element it has is the trends, right? So it's going to be at the bottom of the trends with its height and its let's see if what I'm saying really worked. Yeah, so now we can see that we have our trending here, right? Great, it's great, but I think the height, you have to increase the height. Let's make it 400 pixels and see. Great. Now let's add our elements within the trending. So back in our HTML, we see, let's see the image. We have a header. We have a header. We have some text. We have let's do the header first, right? So now let's see within the trending. I'm just going to do the trends. Let me first header, right? So the trends header is going to be probably we're going to just do an H5 or an H5 is too soon. Cool. And let's do fastest processor, right? Just as we have here, fastest processor. And we're going to give it another. I mean this particular text, right? We have to add up. So I'm going to call that one trends content, right? That's going to be the content of the trends. Forgive me for cutting, right? I just want to beat time, right? I don't want to make this video too long, right? And we're just going to feed it some dummy text. I'm just going to do lorem, let's say 25, right? And we have 25 dummy text of length 25. Let's see how it looks like. Great, right? And we have one other element, that is the person who wrote that particular blog, right? So that means probably the author. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to use author. So that's the author, and I'm going to give it a dummy text to P. That's a paragraph, right? By blogger, by Blogger X, right? And the last one is the read more button, right? So I'm just going to do dot read more, and I'm going to, yeah, it's going to contain a P of read more. Great. Let's see. So now this is what we have so far, right? Let's start it. I'm going to go real fast here. So starting the trends header, I go back. I just copy. Go to my. Okay, so I'm going to give it a color of red and font size of 40 pixels and font width of 400 pixels, right? That's a font trends header H5, right? So now let's see. It looks kind of cool. Let's start this text right here. So right here back in our CSS, let's check our HTML trends content. Let me copy them. Select okay, and it's a P. So now let's see. I'm going to give it a font weight of 100 and a font size of 16 pixels. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, it looks good. Now let's start by Blogger X, that one right here, right? So back to our HTML, we see it is called Atha, that's the div, and it has a P, right? So now let's start Atha.p. For Atha P, I'm going to give it font weight of 100 and font size of 16 pixels, just as the trends content P, right? And now let's work on the read more, right? So for the read more, I'm going to give it height of, let's say, 40 pixels, width of 100 pixels, and border red, 1 pixel solid red, so we can see it. Display flex, align item center, justify content center, so that it will all put the whole thing in the middle, right? The text in the middle, and font size 14 pixels. Let me see. Yeah, this is just good. Let's see how it looks like. Great, it looks good, but then we have to position this very well, right? I don't like the positioning, right? So now let's come back to the trending. Back here we look for the trending and give it a padding of 30 pixels, right? Let's see how it looks. Okay, I think I'm kind of liking it now, right? But then this is not the positioning we want to achieve this positioning, right? So now let's see, how do we do that? We can set display to grid, right? So now for the trending, we're going to set display to grid. So I'm going to display to grid, right? And grid template column, since there are 4 elements in it, I'm going to set rows, right? Since they are in rows, I want it to be 2 fraction, 1 fraction, and 1 fraction, right? For the division of all the 4 items. And I'm going to change the width to probably 90% and the height to 30 pixels, right? So now let's see how it looks like. Great. Now I think I think this is cool, right? So now let's move from here and go and style the other side, right? That is the trending part. Is that the trending? Now this is featured blocks part, right? So now let's move on to this part. Okay, so now we go back into Visual Studio Code HTML, and within let's close the trending, the trends in general. Then let's go back to the featured blocks, right? To the featured blocks, we see we have 2 where is the image? We have 2 elements, right? 2 elements right here, right? The height is about 40% of the width, right? So now let's see how we're going to do that. So I'm going to create 2 elements, dot block, right? And I'm going to copy that and make them 2, right? So 2 dot blocks, right? Let me just do one first, right? And let's see how it turns out. So with the dot blocks, we see that we have an image and this text, right? So I'm going to separate these two, the image and the text, right? Or the description. So I'm going to do within the dot block, I'm going to have an image, right? And I'm going to have a description, right? Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to I think I've used far too long time in this video, sake of the talking and all those things. So I'm going to speed code from here on. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to just go ahead, right? No talking. I'll touch on things I need to touch on, but then let's go fast, right, guys?
Blazing on the track, boy.
You can take all the racks, fuck all the depths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that, yeah, you know what it is, bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached, paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is, I got stabbed in the back, by some traders and rats, I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is, long as they know that I'll never forgive, long as they know that I'll never forgive, long as they know that I'll never forget, yeah. Cleaning my plate how it is. It's dirty, but it's perfect. Long as I ate, I'ma live. Long as my niggas got purpose. Long as my hood ain't a circus. Long as they go out and work shit. Fuck all that being a bird shit. Who told you you don't deserve shit? Who told you people like us couldn't learn shit? That we gotta beg and never earn shit. Niggas that told us we never be worth shit. They just wanna be praised and worshiped. That's why I showed them no mercy. Yeah, they smile when I win, but they hurtin'. Yeah. You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget.
Take all the racks, take the Sprite with the dirt in. Go ahead and take away the packs. Some of my brothers are serving. I was down bad on my dick, there were bees on my blinkers to keep me from hurting. Who done told you shit was perfect? I can't fuck with goofies, I'm allergic. Welcome to 351, but they can't make it out, they gon' drag you down with them. Welcome to get off your ass, they ain't got no passion, they blaming the system. I took the Cartier right on my wrist. Fuck it, it is what it is. Give you my trust, I won't do it again. I cannot do it again, no.
You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Yeah.
Blazing on the track, boy.
You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Yeah. Cleaning my plate how it is. It's dirty, but it's perfect. Long as I ate, I'ma live. Long as my niggas got purpose. Long as my hood ain't a circus. Long as they go out and work shit. Fuck all that being a bird shit. Who told you you don't deserve shit? Who told you people like us couldn't learn shit? That we gotta beg and never earn shit. Niggas that told us we never be worth shit. They just wanna be praised and worshipped. That's why I showed them no mercy. Yeah, they smile when I win, but they hurtin'. Yeah. You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget.
Take all the racks, take the Sprite with the dirt in. Go ahead and take away the packs. Some of my brothers are serving. I was down bad on my dick, there were bees on my blinkers to keep me from hurting. Who done told you shit was perfect? I can't fuck with goofies, I'm allergic. Welcome to 351, but they can't make it out, they gon' drag you down with them. Welcome to get off your ass, they ain't got no passion, they blaming the system. I took the Cartier right on my wrist. Fuck it, it is what it is. Give you my trust, I won't do it again. I cannot do it again, no.
You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Yeah.
Blazing on the track, boy.
You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that. As long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forgive. Long as they know that I'll never forgive. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Yeah. Cleaning my plate how it is. It's dirty, but it's perfect. Long as I ate, I'ma live. Long as my niggas got purpose. Long as my hood ain't a circus. Long as they go out and work shit. Fuck all that being a bird shit. Who told you you don't deserve shit? Who told you people like us couldn't learn shit? That we gotta beg and never earn shit. Niggas that told us we never be worth shit. They just wanna be praised and worshiped. That's why I showed them no mercy. Yeah, they smile when I win, but they hurtin'. Yeah. You could take all the racks, fuck all the deaths, fuck all the jury, it's bigger than that. Yeah, you know what it is. Bro, I'm living my raps, ripping the ghetto, I got it attached. Paid all the black tax, yeah, you know what it is. I got stabbed in the back, by some traders and rats. I got no problem with that, as long as they know what it is. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget. Long as they know that I'll never forget.
Take all the racks, take the Sprite with the dirt in. Go ahead and take away the packs. Some of my brothers are serving. I was down bad on my dick, double D's on my blinkers to keep me from hurting. Who done told you shit was perfect? I can't fuck with goofies, I'm allergic. Welcome to 351, but they can't make it out, they gon' drag you down with them.